Welcome to The World Today. I'm Sana Maqbool, and in today's show we will be talking about the recent happening at by the Speaker, Deputy Speaker, National Assembly, Mr. Qasim Suri, who was interrupted by the Indian delegates at the Sustainable Development Goals Summit on Sunday. And the issue, of course, that was raised by him was that of Kashmir, and he was indeed interrupted by the Indian delegates, saying that this forum is for the SDGs and not for the Kashmir issue at hand. We'll talk more about this discussion that happened at this summit, and of course the Kashmir situation in general, and what stances have been coming out from the Indian side so far. Similarly, we'll also be talking about statements by the international leaders regarding this Kashmir issue, where we see that the US presidential candidate Bernie Sanders has also expressed his opinion, talking about President Donald Trump's recent comments, where he seems to track back from where he earlier standed in terms of mediation on the Kashmir issue, saying now that this is something between Pakistan and India. So we'll take a look at the general situation in Kashmir, and we will also be taking a look at the Afghanistan peace deal that apparently is supposed to be on the verge, according to Zalmay Khalilzad, and we'll see exactly what that means and whether or not that means a serious peace solution for Afghanistan. To talk more about this, we have with us in our studios our respected guests. So let me first introduce Brigadier Retired Mr. Shahid Jagir, who's a senior analyst. Thank you for joining us today, sir. And we also have senior journalist, who is Mr. Raja Faisal. Thank you for being with us today, sir. Well, starting about the topic on Kashmir, Brigadier Saab, we saw what happened at the SDGs summit. How do you see Indian responses so far, saying that this is a bilateral issue and not something to be discussed at this forum?
Thank you very much, Sana. First, the Indians, the political pressure of the world which is mounting on Indians, probably they were not expecting this thing. And it is now coming from all sides, at least the people are talking about it. So what happened in the SAARC conference was very undiplomatic on the part of the Indians. When there is a representative who is speaking, at least he should be allowed to speak, and you can give the response afterward. Secondly, as far as the Kashmir is concerned, today almost a month is about to on the lockdown which has been there on the Indians. There is no official news coming from the Kashmir itself. Even Indian opposition is not allowed to go to the Kashmir. Rajiv Gandhi and his other members of the parliament, they were detained at the Srinagar airport and were not allowed to go ahead. Although the reports are very, very grim what are coming from the Indian occupied Kashmir, the people are tortured, pellet guns are very frequently being used, women are raped, there is lot of detention without any reason. If a casualty occurs, the authorities do not give the death certificate from the hospital in order to ensure that there is no count over there for the deaths. And also the youngsters are being picked up, their parents are being threatened. And a couple of days back, incident was reported on the social media, which was so horrifying that a woman, a young lady was being raped in front of her mother. And when she, protested, that mother was shot dead point blankly.
Right.
So this is what the situation over there is at the moment in the Kashmir. But unfortunately, the Indian BJP government and the Indian people at the helm of affairs at this time, they are paying no heed at all to the word leaders, to the word opinion in this regard, which is absolutely not acceptable as a civilized country in the Westphalian system and the United Nations system. You see, yesterday the US presidential candidate has very openly talked about this. That,
Right.
That we have to do something about it. The American government has to do something about it, but all atrocities are going on in the Indian occupied Kashmir.
But then again, we don't see similar statements from the administration or the US president himself, who seems to now say that Pakistan and India can resolve this issue on their own.
Oh, that's what it is. The U.S. administration, because of its own, South Asian interest, they are not talking about it. But rest of the, not only he, there are many other American congressmen, those who are talking about the atrocities which are being committed by the Indians.
Right. We also see Ilhan Omar, who has spoken very vocally against Trump.
Then the Indian opposition is talking about, Yesterday there was an interview of ex-Prime Minister Manmohan Singh that this radical approach of the BJP government is, affecting the economy of the country. They have taken a loan day before yesterday from Central Reserve Bank of India, almost equivalent to a budget amount.
Right.
So the BJP government, instead of focusing on the development and economy of the country, they are focusing on this thing because they have they are propagating that RSS ideology, that Akhand Bharat and Mother India, because they have nothing to offer to the Indians, and that is the only way they are they are popular, and they want to make themselves popular. You see the way the Prime Minister Modi has met American Prime Minister in the G7 summit, calling it a bilateral issue. Now this issue is no more bilateral because it's a human rights issue.
Yes,
People
but we
are being
see that
killed.
the Indian stance is completely different. That I'd like to include Mr. Faisal in the discussion as well. Mr. Faisal, we see that even though it has been extremely clear now to most of the international community that what is going on in Kashmir, especially with reference to the human rights violations there, is just not acceptable. But then we see statements by India. We saw it in the SDG summit. We saw it from the Premier himself, Modi, who has again reiterated that this is a bilateral issue or an internal matter of India. And it seems that this stance is not going away.
Well, that's what I was about to, add into this. That what we have seen in the recent past is that the Indians, they had, developed a habit of calling the Kashmir issue as their internal issue, rather than they didn't even call it a bilateral issue. And now I think this is a major success of Pakistan, that Pakistan has not only changed it from whatever they've been, claiming that it's an internal issue. Pakistan has successfully changed it into a bilateral issue. Not only that, but Pakistan has actually taken that issue to an international level in such a magnitude that whatever we have seen in recent days, that Indians, they are reacting to it. And I think the full credit must go to Prime Minister of Pakistan, that the way he has actually came forward and exposed Indians after the illegal annexation of Kashmir, whatever India did in Kashmir, and the imposition of a high number of active troops in there. It's a warlike situation in Kashmir right now, and of course the world, it is seeing it, and they know what what kind of outcome could be coming out of Kashmir once all of the things are stabilized back in Kashmir. But until then, they don't know what's going on in Kashmir. Why? Because media is not allowed to enter in there. Even their own media is not getting a reach. And the media which is getting a reach to Kashmir, it's a cherry-picked media which is funded by RAW, which is controlled by RAW, and of course whatever they would be wanting them to put forward or them to bring forward in terms of news, that would be considered as news, and
right,
world is not accepting that. And
okay.
I think this is a success of Pakistan, and the recent step by Prime Minister of appealing whole Pakistan to come out on Friday, that has created an impact, that has created an impact in this way that the world is actually accepting this, that Pakistan is the country which is wanting a peaceful solution, whereas Indians, they are being the main aggressors between in this bilateral issue.
Right. When you talk about how information that comes out of Kashmir is also filtered by the Indian officials, do you think that reports such as those by the Association of the Parents of Disappeared Persons, we saw this 560-page long report that is, I think, come out today, in which the torture that is being inflicted upon civilians has been shown quite significantly. And then we also see that the team of Indian doctors went and sort of highlighted the situation, the medical situation in the area. Do you think these reports have any value to the international community then, when you say that information coming out is filtered?
It has a huge value. Why? The evidence we have is that Senator Bernie Sanders, he has actually mentioned the doctors as well.
Yeah.
He has mentioned them reports as well.
Yeah.
And this is the value of that. And I think Bernie Sanders, we must appreciate that, as always. I mean, he has a habit of coming forward and condemning what needs to be condemned. And this time around, he has condemned fully and with open words, no hiding, no diplomatic words he used. He straight away used what the truth was. And I think this was need of the hour, that the leaders like Bernie Sanders, who has a reach throughout the world, I mean, people throughout the world, they listen to him.
Right.
And these sort of people, when they highlight these kind of issues, it is very important for people of Kashmir, it is very important for people of Pakistan, and I must say people of India as well. Why? Because the mad doctrine of Modi and RSS, it is actually taking both of the countries, people of both of the countries, into a disaster. And world must act before something happens in this region.
Right. Okay. So if we take it this way, that the opinions of world leaders such as Bernie Sanders have a certain influence and impact on the international population, and they're highlighting the issue. But then when we see the U.S. president or the U.S. administration taking a different sort of stance, how do we push for a more active U.S. role in terms of resolving the Kashmir issue, or if not that, then just highlighting the human atrocities there? I mean, so far we have not really heard something very definite from Trump against Indian atrocities.
Look, whatever Prime Minister has done diplomatically, as my colleague has said, is wonderful. It has not been done in the past. Now, the important thing is to move ahead, keep this pressure on. Now, most important and the thing is that the media must play a very, very important role, because it forms the opinion of the public, irrespective of whatever the government's aim and objectives are of a country. It is the media, it's the people, and especially in the European countries and the America, the voice of the peoples carry a lot of weightage.
Right.
For that, we have to go aggressive in our approach and work on the gains we have done so far, where the American senators, the OIC, European people, they are all talking, although with a very low tone at the moment.
Right.
But a time is going to come that when they will see what is happening over there, and especially the world is fighting to get rid of the terrorism from the last 4 decades. Now, what happens if this radicalization policy of Modi spreads all over India? All the fanatic Hindus of the BJP, they are talking about that the Muslims should be expelled from India. You see, in Assam, the census were done, and thousands of people have been set aside. Now they are left with no identity at all. They are talking about the Akhand Bharat. The 20 million people are living in India. What what if they will also start talking of these things? And this wave of radicalization from Kashmir is slowly and gradually getting down, as we have seen after Pulwama, where people in different part of India, they literally targeted all the Kashmiris in whichever country and whichever city they were. So what will happen? This will create a radicalized region, and when the region will be, India will be radicalized as a whole, now terrorism is bound to come. ISIS has proven its foothold in India. So what will happen? They have gone up till Sri Lanka in the bombing. So do this, if all this is engulfed with the terrorist mindset and extremist mindset, the whole Asia will suffer. And the moment whole Asia will suffer, the world will automatically suffer because of the economic dependence on Asia as a consumer market. The whole world's economy will suffer.
Right. Similar sentiments were shared by Prime Minister Imran Khan at the same forum that Bernie Sanders spoke, where he sort of underlined the fact that the Kashmir issue is posing a threat not just to Pakistan and India, but the fact that it's going to spread regionally as well. When we see Prime Minister Imran Khan reiterating time and again that something such as the Pulwama incident can reoccur, or that because the two nations are nuclearly armed, this can lead to a strategic miscalculation. How significant do you think this threat is to Pakistan, and is it being taken seriously?
I think Prime Minister of Pakistan has handled it very well by mentioning it before it occurs.
Right.
Reason being, this is what the Indians, they have been doing in past. They have been creating and staging false flag attacks just to malign Pakistan, that Pakistan was sort of like, investing in terror in Kashmir, which has nothing to do with Pakistan. Whatever is happening in Indian occupied Kashmir, it has everything to do with the freedom struggle. Youth of Kashmir, they know it very well, that they have to come out and speak for their own freedom. And once they realized that the verbal chants are not good enough, and we have to take the arms up against the tyrant India to seek freedom. And I believe calling the foul shots or hawks calls that Pakistan is staging something in there, this is not the case. I mean, I have recently visited Kashmir.
Okay.
We were earlier talking about that they are sending only a few journalists, which are cherry-picked journalists, their favored journalists. I've been there. I haven't been stopped by anyone, and I have actually asked quite a few people that what happens when the shelling starts from the other side. The reason why the appropriate shelling is not answered by Pakistan is that Pakistan's army is calculatingly doing it. If there is a fear of collateral damage on the other side, they avoid it.
Sure.
Reason being, for Pakistan army, Kashmiris on the other side of the border and Kashmiris on this side
Both
of the
are
border,
important.
they are both important. So this is the reason that Pakistan's army has to be very careful, and Pakistan has to be very careful in that sense, that they are not thinking about any collateral damage. They don't want to hurt people. Whereas Indians, they are constantly doing it. Why? Because neither the Kashmiris on the other side of the border are important to them, nor the Kashmiris on this side. Reason being, wherever the Kashmiris are killed or getting martyred, they are not bothered about it. And I think world is watching that. United Nations like offices in Muzaffarabad, they know about these things.
Right.
And appropriate forums are being used to discuss that. So I think it's going along very well now.
Okay, when we look at the Prime Minister's address once again, we also see something that you earlier mentioned as well, that the RSS ideology is having an impact not just on Kashmir or on India and Pakistan's bilateral relations, but within India itself, and it's also a threat to the Muslim minorities as well as other religious minorities, especially when we see Assam situation in India. How do you see the fact that this ideology that is being followed by the Modi's government is going to have an impact within India itself, and is that going to change the public opinion there regarding Kashmir?
Look, Hussaina, there are 20 insurgencies going on in India other than Kashmir. The second thing is that there are many other states in India like UP, Assam and others which are bounded by particular regulations as is Kashmir. Now, they are also afraid that if this can happen in Kashmir, next is our turn. So, they are also worried. The Muslims are particularly worried. It's not the Muslims, the Christians are also worried. Now, there have been massacres of Christians by the Hindus, fanatics in the past. The gangs of RSS people with brown dress they wear is the brown short and the black headscarf. Though they are moving around in the India. You see even the very liberal Indian film industry, Muslim actors are being threatened for any statement which is pro-Pakistani and pro-Kashmiris.
Right.
So this atmosphere, if it will keep on prevailing, and as I quote from the book of Nelson Mandela, which is known as the freedom fighter of 21st century, he said, when a law-abiding person, if denied the right to live according to the civilized conditions and all, he is bound to pick up arms. As my colleague has said, no, any child, any grown-up child, teenager in front of whom his mother or his sister is raped, he will have that mental effect on his mind.
Sure.
Now these are the people, those who think of, every young man will think of, it's a human thing, it has nothing to do with the religion, and that is why we say that, and the Prime Minister has said, that any incident happening because of the atrocities of the Indian army and paramilitary forces in Kashmir, as happened in Pulwama, now India is bound to connect Pakistan with this, as they are saying time and again that they are going to the infiltration is going on from Pakistan, whereas Pakistan has banned all the these organizations which are creating trouble as such. But India is in no mood at the moment till the time more word pressure will come on him. Now, they are at the moment trying to avoid the General Assembly election, which is going to happen by the end of this month, and they want that this should be pass away instead of raising a voice towards the Kashmiri. Now, this is the time that not only, as the Prime Minister has said, that he will address the Kashmir issue over there, it is a time that all the Kashmiri Muslims and the Muslims in the liberal world, especially Europe and America, now they should come out, they should support their people like we have done it, rather than that on a day for 1 hour. Now they are the one, our embassies have to do this job to help them. Kashmiri leadership has to remain united. Malik Saab, who is a Kashmiri freedom fighter, he is put in a cell of 4/8. He's about to counting his health problems and all. Despite that, there is nothing which is being done for them.
Right. One thing that you mentioned was that the Indian government needs more pressure to be put on them. And when we see, when we talk about pressure, we see that Prime Minister Imran Khan has also looked at the US, but has also looked time and again at the OSCE as well. He mentioned this as well in his speech, that the OSCE needs to also do more. And when we talked about earlier, expressing its stance, but in a lower tone, if we see what more aggressive stance the OSCE can take, or any particular actions that can be taken by them, what options do we see?
Well, first of all, you can hurt a country with the economic embargoes, and I think right now the Middle Eastern countries, they are not in a position to go for that. And talking about putting more pressure by Pakistan, is that Pakistan can engage with the other organizations as well, and Pakistan can engage with a block of two powerful countries, China and Russia. They are actually at very good terms with each other right now, and Pakistan must seek help from them as well. And the civilized world throughout the world, of course, would be with Pakistan. Reason being, Pakistan's case is a very strong case, and Brigadier Saab has, rightly pointed out that there are certain issues with India right now. They are self-created issues, and the very important issue which I would like to highlight here is of Khalistan. 1984, what we saw was the Golden Temple. It happens, massacre of Golden Temple. Jarnail Singh Bhindranwala, he was murdered there, and we saw riots after that, and thousands of Sikh, they were slaughtered in the streets of Delhi, in the streets of Amritsar, So we have to keep that in mind, and Khalistan right now is becoming another issue which is going to be unhandleable by the Indians. And one very important thing which I want to mention here, that bilateral relations between Pakistan and India, looking at whatever's happening in Kashmir right now, world powers, they are actually coming forward to talk to both of the countries for normalizing the situation in the region. But Pakistan would have a stance in which Pakistan would demand that India must go back to its position which it was before Article 370 imposition. Quashing of Article 370. So they would have to go back if they want to talk to Pakistan. And I think this is a very, I must say, this is something which is very important by Pakistan. Pakistan is ready to talk, but on the certain demands which Pakistan would be making to India. And if India says no to that, then of course Pakistan would not be talking to India.
Of course.
So, I think,
a certain premise has to be established. When we see that this issue is going to be raised at the United Nations General Assembly, we earlier saw that a good achievement by Pakistan was witnessed when we see that the UN Security Council session was held on Kashmir. Do we hope to see a more tangible achievement by the discussion on this issue in the UN General Assembly?
Look, the tangible things are, happening. As my colleague has said, that they are the voices which are coming up now, that it has been done wrong by the Indians. As my colleague has said, the Prime Minister has, the Foreign Minister yesterday, he talked and said that we have put two conditions for talking to the Indians. Now, Indians are, getting into the mood of talking, and he has said that two preconditions. One, which he has said that Article 370 should be, reverted. Second thing is that the curfew should be lifted immediately.
Right.
They should be given the right to sell. But, there are two very important things which we can talk in the General Assembly now. By revoking Article 370, India has, ruled out the so-called whatever, agreement of accession to India of 1947, which the Sheikh Abdullah had done with the India. Now they have, thrown it in the dustbin. They have thrown into the dustbin the bilateral agreement, which was a Shimla agreement between Pakistan and India. They have also thrown it. So now it is no more, a bilateral issue. Bilateral issues are only when two parties sit together and want to talk. Prime Minister Imran Khan, right on coming on his first speech, he has said that we want a good relations with Pakistan. You go, Indian go one step ahead, we will go 2 steps ahead. And we had demonstrated this in the shape of Kartarpur. Despite all these problems between India and Pakistan, we have not stopped that project. We say that we will go ahead. And alhamdulillah, our speed of work over there is more than the Indian side. Now, having done that, now it is the time that we must seek an intervention of the UN, because the UN has right in 1948 adopted a resolution, and every citizen of a country has a right to live according to the way. Historically speaking, the Mountbatten also said to the Raja that when he sent a letter for a session to India, he said that if I correctly remember the words, the British government accept your letter, but it is advised to you, the word these were, and suggested to you, the moment the situation gets calmed, the people of the Kashmir should be given the right of self-determination by asking their opinion that which side they
Absolutely.
want to agree. So right at the day one, this was the stance. But India, because of hegemonic designs and all that, they do not want to accept this thing. They do not want to accept this thing. Now, as far as the question you've asked for the OIC, OIC has very positively responded yesterday. As far as the actions to be taken by any organization, in my personal view, OIC can do a lot by just stopping their import in their countries by the Indians of Indian-made products. Second is that they should say thank you very much to their labor which is doing over there, which is sending billions of dollars back home. And the biggest is the oil embargo from the Muslim countries. That will hurt the Indian the most. So there are many ways. If the sanctions can be put on by the United Nations.
But of course, we see that economic interests sort of precede those of resolution of the issue.
If the UN can put in economic sanctions for any small, human rights violation in a country, why can't they do it now when there is such a big massacre going on?
If they can do it with North Korea, why can't with India? Why?
Right.
Because similar things are going on in North Korea, and they have been, putting embargoes and putting sanctions on that country. Why can't they do it with India? Right now, there are not one, not two, not three, several states which are, facing the tyranny of the current India.
And North Koreans, by the way, North Koreans' atrocities is not as compared to what is happening.
Yeah, what is happening in Kashmir. At least there is something which actually comes out of North Korea that, things are normal.
Right,
Not
it's not
that
a
way,
complete
but yeah.
shutdown.
But talking about India right now, I mean, nobody can say anything about Kashmir. Reason being, nobody knows what's going on in there because it's locked right now. It's like a jail, and nobody can go there to meet anyone, and no connection with the outer world, which is disastrous not only for India but of course for the whole region as well. And something I just wanted to add in terms of what the world, the Muslim world could do. Muslim world, yes, they have their own problems when it comes to the economy. They sort of rely upon other countries. Why? Because they don't have their own products to feed themselves, and they do have dependency on other countries. But at the same time, Iranians, I mean, Supreme Leader of Iran, he came forward and he put forward a very strong stance against India on the issue of Kashmir. Same way, the other Muslim countries can do that as well. And I think Iran is the country which is having sort of oil relationships with India. I think they need to think about that as well. But at the same time, we know that they are facing their own problems in the Gulf. Of course, when it comes to US and Iran relationships, bilateral relationships in the current scenario. So there are hurdles for them to do that. But if they were, all okay right now, I'm sure the Iranians would have put oil embargo on the Indians. I think the other countries, they need to do something about it. Why? Because Kashmir is a Muslim state, and Muslims there, they are waiting for their Muslim brethren to come forward and stand for them.
Right.
And if Pakistan should not be considered alone facing the tyranny of India, Pakistan should not be considered alone in fight for the justice in Kashmir. Other Muslim countries, they must come forward, and what we've seen is Iran has come forward, and Turkish, they are they have the pro-Pakistan stance as well. Rest of the countries, they must come forward as well.
Well, that of course remains to be seen, but we hope that other countries also step up, and the UN could also play a more significant role in this regard. Let's move on to the Afghanistan peace deal, in which we see that Mr. Zalmay Khalilzad has recently said that we're on a verge of achieving a certain milestone in this, and this is after the 9th round of talks has been going on in Qatar. But something problematic about this, of course, is that it still focuses on just two things, which is that the US withdrawal of troops and that Afghanistan's soil is not going to be used against any other country, but does not really resolve the issue for the Afghanistan officials or security forces and the Taliban themselves, for them to have an intra-Afghan dialogue, because that's something they're still sort of opposed to. They're only sending their representatives in a private capacity, but it is still something that they're opposed to, especially the elections as well. So do you really think that this statement is correct when Mr. Zalmay Khalilzad said that we're on a verge of a peace deal?
All right. Look, the 40 years war will take time to come to a conclusion. One statement that we are on the verge of a deal.
Right.
Now the deal is it is going to be a phased program. And the phased program, and in which the Taliban's spokesman in his statement in the media day before yesterday, he has said that in the first phase, the Americans are going to withdraw almost 10,000 troops. The rest of them will stay over there. The second thing he has said is that the Taliban, after having an agreement with the US, will talk to the the Taliban leadership, the Afghan government leadership, but not considering them as Afghan government. Now the third thing in this is that, which is very critical, is that the ceasefire agreement which will happen between US and Taliban, it will be between Taliban and US. Now they will immediately lift the ceasefire if in case of a firefight between the government forces and Taliban, if the US forces are the NATO forces which are there, if they will come to the help of the Afghan security forces, the Taliban is likely to withdraw. So there are many ifs and buts in this agreement so far. But the good thing is that they are talking. They are talking. The terms and conditions, obviously, Talibans have fought this war for 40 years. They are not the Talibans which, which the world has seen in 90s.
Right.
They have learned the lesson. They have diplomatic people also. They have also said that the US has to release about 5,000 of their prisoners, and Taliban seeks releasing the US and the allied prisoners which they have. But at the same time, they have also said that the Afghan government people which have been, taken as prisoners, their cases are there under the Afghan Shura, and probably they will not be given back to as a prisoner exchange. So I think, in my personal view, the homework, the steps are in the right direction. It will take some time to move forward. They have also said that we will not participate in the presidential election, and in a very mild and diplomatic word, that they have also said words to the fact that we will see how the presidential election will happen.
Exactly.
So all these things as a whole seems to be still very dark, but there is one hope which is a light at the end of the tunnel, that they are sitting together, they are talking about it, and both parties want a solution.
Right. Okay. So when we see that at least the Taliban seem to be coming to the table, but then we also see the Taliban fighters have recently attacked Pul-e Khumri, and there is fighting that has been going on between the security force and Taliban. So we see both of that. We also see they have a vast land that they have also still have influence over. When we look at both of these things, with them being willing to go towards a political solution, and then them also causing disruptions, and then of course, as Brigadier Saab said regarding the elections, are you also hopeful for any intra-Afghan dialogue in the future? Because perhaps a US-Afghanistan Taliban ceasefire is something that we are able to achieve, but then the next step is far more important.
Throughout the world, every conflict ends at peace, and the world must come forward and to bring that peace sooner rather later. What I have seen in whatever's going on in Afghanistan is Zalmay Khalilzad. He is considered as a seasoned diplomat who has a very good record of diplomacy, and he is trying his hard to bring that peace sooner rather later. Reason being, this is a sort of D case for him. Whenever Zalmay Khalilzad would be remembered in the books of the history, he would be remembered for Afghan peace deal.
Right.
So this is very important for him. There were certain issues. First of all, Taliban do not recognize the current setup, the government. Reason being, they openly say it that they were the ones who were airdropped by the C-130s of the Americans,
Sure.
and they were the ones who actually landed at the Bagram Air Base. And at once they land in Kabul, and they start holding the offices. So they do not have the legitimate power behind them. Taliban are right about it, and what I have gone through one of the spokesperson of the Taliban. He has said it that he was jubilant enough, and I think he has every right to be. Reason being, this is their success, and Zalmay Khalilzad is jubilant enough as well. There were certain issues they thought that they were important to talk with the Taliban, especially when it comes to women empowerment in the Afghanistan post-withdrawal, US withdrawal. And the other thing is the education of the females and human rights. To some extent, with the time, the Afghan Taliban, they have realized that for a healthy society,
Right.
these sort of things, they are very important. And I believe this resolve is getting to somewhere where we can say that things would get to normalization. the issue about the current setup,
Right.
they, they will not be having any sort of setup, and their chunk in the administration would be very less.
All right, thank you. Of course, we hope that we can achieve a significant peace deal for Afghanistan, which is obviously of much importance to us as well. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us today. Well, that was the conversation that you heard on this note. We're going to say goodbye, and we're going to see you tomorrow once again. Thank you for watching.